We have some obviously very interesting recent history, but the history of this fixture in cup competitions goes back over a century. I always think that the 1920s was the development of the Bohs Rovers rivalry, which obviously went into abeyance a bit kind of in the 40s and 50s as Bohs stayed amateur and Rovers kind of progressed under the likes of Paddy Code and people like that. But in the 20s, if you think about it, the Bohs and Rovers were kind of the two dominant sides, and they met in the cup a few times. Obviously, Rovers won the first one, Bohs won the second kind of cup meeting. But one famous game, which was actually in the Metropolitan Cup, ended up in a bit of a fist fight apparently between Bob Fulham and Ernie Crawford. Ernie Crawford tearing off his jersey in the middle of the pitch and challenging Bob Fulham to a fist fight. In a game that was notorious for the robustness of the tackling and things like that. So I think you can trace some of the Bohs Rovers rivalry back to that period of time.
The Bohemians were one of the top established clubs, along with Shelbourne and St James's Gate, in the country at the time, and were obviously founding members of the League of Ireland that season, which was 1921-22. Shamrock Rovers had taken a sabbatical during the Great War and then the War of Independence, and had only come back into football the year before that. So when Rovers came over to Dalymount Park in 1922 for the semi-final, they should have been the underdogs because they were only a Leinster Senior League side compared to Bohemians, who, as I say, were one of the leading clubs in the country at the time and one of the founding members of the league. Apparently it was a very tough game. John Joe Flood scored after 35 minutes. Bohs piled the pressure on after that, but Rovers were very strong. They were a very strong side and difficult to break down, difficult to play against. And so it proved to be on the day of the semi-final.
I think Glenn Crowe actually might be related to a former Rovers player, Liam Crowe, who played for them several decades back before that. And there's all sorts of connections like that. Eamon Gregg, who managed Bohs to the 92 Cup final, he's a nephew of Podge Gregg, who scored for Rovers in the 1945 final here in Dalymount. And up until last year, that was the record attendance ever at an FAI Cup final. And I like to think that even though Bohs weren't successful on those occasions, that the common denominator for the biggest ever attendance at cup finals is the Bohemian Football Club. So always the big club, you know.
Well, it was wartime crowd probably as well. So, there were very big crowds around the league at that time. Rovers and Shelbourne had played at Dalymount Park in the final the year before that. It's a fairly big crowd as well. But in 1945, that was the biggest recorded attendance at that time in an FAI Cup final.
We've had very recent ones. The famous Andy Lyons winner here in Dalymount a couple of years ago. A game full of drama. Georgie Kelly getting sent off, a very mild-mannered man, but even the heat of the fixture even got to him.
It's going to be a big game for sure. There's a couple of important games in the league to come before then. For Rovers, there's also Europe, but we're really looking forward to it.
You might say it's recency bias, but I do think the most recent one, the Andy Lyons winner, just because of the sheer drama of it, because we were coming out of COVID, because it felt like there was 10 times as many people in the ground as there actually were, the drama of it. And also it was, our first cup final in a long time, our first cup final since the win against Gerry in the RDS on a freezing cold night. Getting to that cup final in Lansdowne Road was special. And we were all kind of full of hope that we might do it. Now Pat's had other ideas in mind, they broke the curse. But that one sticks out for me.